I am Hassan, 32 years old, and a software engineer from Chicago. I was so excited for my sister Alyssa's wedding to Jacob, heir to a luxury hotel empire. But when I arrived at the grand reception, something was wrong. "Sorry, sir. Your name is not on the list," the staff said, looking confused. Shocked, I found my mother in her designer gown. She smirked cruelly. "Did you really think you were invited? Strangers are not allowed." I smiled calmly. "Then I will live like a stranger." Before I continue this painful story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button and stay with me because what happened next changed everything. Growing up in the Chicago suburbs, our family appeared perfectly normal from the outside. My father, William, had built a successful furniture retail chain from nothing. Starting with a single storefront, he expanded to 15 locations across Illinois and Wisconsin through sheer determination and honest business practices. He was respected in the community, known for his integrity and fairness to both customers and employees. My mother, Patricia, however, had different priorities. While Dad focused on building something meaningful, Mom concentrated on appearances. She treated social status as a competitive sport, always looking for ways to climb higher on the social ladder. Nothing was ever enough for her. When we moved to a larger house in a better neighborhood, she immediately began planning for an even bigger one. When Dad bought her a new car, she complained it was not the luxury model her friends drove. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my sister Alyssa was the favorite child. 3 years younger than me, she was the baby of the family. But the preferential treatment went far beyond normal sibling dynamics. My academic achievements were barely acknowledged, while Alyssa received lavish praise for even minor accomplishments. I still remember bringing home straight, as in my junior year, including advanced placement classes, only to have my mother glance at the report card and ask why I had not joined more prestigious extracurricular activities. That same week, Alyssa brought home a B- average, and Mom took her shopping as a reward for trying her best. Dad noticed these discrepancies but usually attempted to compensate quietly, taking me for private congratulatory dinners or offering words of encouragement when Mom was not around. The pattern continued throughout our childhood. My high school graduation party was modest, held in our backyard with just a few friends. For Alyssa, Mom rented a venue and invited everyone who mattered in her social circle. My college graduation celebration was canceled entirely because it conflicted with a weekend trip Alyssa wanted to take with her friends. Dad objected, but Mom insisted Alyssa would be devastated if she missed the trip. "Your sister is more sensitive than you," Mom would explain whenever I questioned the obvious favoritism. "You have always been more independent, Hassan. You do not need as much support." Independence was not a choice, but a necessity in my situation. I learned early that relying on my mother for emotional support was futile. Dad tried to fill the gap, teaching me about business, integrity, and perseverance. "Build something real," he would tell me. "Something that has value, beyond appearances." His lessons became even more precious when we lost him unexpectedly 7 years ago. A heart attack took him at 59, shocking everyone who knew him. He had always been healthy, active, careful with his diet. The doctors said sometimes these things just happen. But I always wondered if the stress of maintaining peace in our family contributed to his early death. The reading of his will brought another shock. While Mom received controlling interest in the business as expected, I was named a silent partner with 25% ownership. "Your father always believed in your judgment," the family lawyer explained to me privately. "He wanted you to have a voice in the company's future." Mom was furious about this arrangement but could not change the terms. Instead, she minimized my involvement, scheduling board meetings when I could not attend, and making decisions without proper consultation. By then, I had moved to Boston for a job at a tech company, partly to advance my career, but mostly to create some emotional distance from family dynamics. Despite the geographical separation, I made consistent efforts to maintain family connections. Weekly calls to Mom, regular texts with Alyssa, visits on major holidays. The responses were usually lukewarm at best, but I persisted out of respect for Dad's memory and hoped that things might improve over time. 3 years after Dad's death, Alyssa met Jacob Thompson at a charity gala in New York. The Thompsons owned a chain of luxury hotels across the country, old money with connections to everything that mattered in high society. Their courtship was brief and intense. Within 6 months, Jacob proposed with a ring that cost more than my annual salary. I was genuinely happy for my sister despite our complicated relationship. My first thought was that she deserved someone who would treasure her, and Jacob seemed sincere in his affection. When she texted me about the engagement, I immediately called to congratulate her. "Thanks, Hassan," she said, sounding more excited than I had heard her in years. "The wedding will be next summer at the Thompson Grand Hotel. Can you believe it? I am going to be a Thompson." "That is amazing, Alyssa. I am really happy for you. Jacob is incredible. Wait until you meet him. And his parents are so connected. Mom is over the moon." I bet she was. This was exactly the kind of social advancement Mother had been engineering for years. A week later, I received a text from Alyssa. "Save the date for the 15th of July next year. Cannot wait to have you there for my special day." That text would turn out to be the closest thing to an actual invitation I would ever receive. 6 months before the wedding, I flew home for the official engagement celebration dinner. Mom had insisted it was absolutely essential that I attend this particular event, a rarity in our family communications. The dinner was being held at an exclusive country club, where the Thompsons were longtime members. "Wear something appropriate," Mom instructed over the phone. "Nothing too casual. And get a haircut before you come." I arrived in Chicago a day early and checked into a downtown hotel rather than staying at the family home. Experience had taught me that maintaining some personal space made these visits more manageable. The evening of the dinner, I arrived at the country club in a new tailored suit, hair freshly cut, determined to make a positive impression for Alyssa's sake. The Thompson family created an immediate impression. Richard and Eleanor Thompson carried themselves with the quiet confidence of people who have never worried about money. They were polite but reserved, assessing everything and everyone with careful consideration. Jacob seemed more relaxed than his parents, greeting me with a firm handshake. "Alyssa talks about you all the time," he said, though his tone suggested this might be an exaggeration. "Great to finally meet you." "Likewise," I replied. "Congratulations on your engagement." Mother had outdone herself for the occasion. Her dress was clearly new and expensive, her jewelry prominent without being gaudy. She worked the room like a politician, laughing too loudly at Richard Thompson's mild jokes, complimenting Eleanor's taste in everything from wine to table settings. Throughout the elaborate 5-course meal, subtle class distinctions became increasingly apparent. The Thompsons made casual references to their recent trips to destinations I had only read about, dropped names of influential people they knew personally, and discussed the private schools their younger relatives attended. Mother participated enthusiastically in these conversations, sometimes embellishing our family background in ways that made me uncomfortable. She referred to Dad's business as our little empire and implied we had vacationed in places we had never visited. I maintained polite silence, unwilling to contradict her publicly but increasingly uneasy with the facade. During a brief lull between courses, Mother pulled me aside, ostensibly to show me the club's historical photographs in the hallway. Once we were alone, her demeanor changed instantly. "Could you at least try to participate in the conversation?" she hissed. "You are sitting there like some kind of statue." "I am being polite, Mom." "What else do you want me to do?" "Talk about your work in a way that sounds impressive. Mention your travels. Say something interesting for once." "I am not going to lie about my life to impress them." She adjusted my tie, unnecessarily, her fingers pinching a little too hard. "This wedding is very important for this family. The Thompsons are exactly the kind of connection we need. Do not embarrass your sister with your ordinariness." Before I could respond, she plastered on her social smile again and guided me back to the table. As we returned, I overheard a fragment of conversation between Alyssa and Eleanor Thompson. "The guest list is becoming quite extensive," Eleanor was saying. "Perhaps some reconsideration of the more peripheral invitations might be wise." "I completely agree," Alyssa nodded eagerly. "We should focus on quality over quantity. Only the right kind of people." They stopped talking as we approached, but the exchange lodged in my mind. Still, I dismissed my concerns. Surely my own sister would not consider me peripheral to her wedding. Over the next few weeks, I made several attempts to connect with Jacob, hoping to build a relationship with my future brother-in-law. I suggested meeting for lunch when he was in Boston for business, offered to show him around the city, even proposed a casual video call to get to know each other better. His responses were unfailingly polite, but non-committal. Schedule's crazy right now. Or, let me check and get back to you, followed by silence. Meanwhile, Alyssa's social media filled with photos of wedding planning activities I had never been invited to. Cake tastings, venue tours, meetings with florists. In several pictures, Mother appeared alongside Alyssa and various Thompson relatives, all smiling as if they had been family forever. My calls and texts to Alyssa grew increasingly infrequent and brief, so busy with wedding stuff, she would explain, never elaborating or asking about my life. When I directly asked about wedding details, her answers became vague and dismissive. Mom is handling most of it. Or, still figuring that out. 3 months after the engagement dinner, Mother organized a family dinner that included the Thompsons. Again, I flew in from Boston, hoping for a chance to feel more included. The evening followed a similar pattern to the engagement dinner, with one notable difference. The conversation turned explicitly to the Thompson family standards and expectations. "We have always been very particular about our associations," Richard Thompson commented while sipping an expensive bourbon. "In business and in personal matters, absolutely essential," Mother agreed immediately. "Quality connections are everything. The wedding will be a reflection of these values," Eleanor added. "Exclusive, tasteful, only the right elements included." Throughout this conversation, Mother kept glancing at me with an unreadable expression. Alyssa avoided eye contact entirely, suddenly very interested in her dessert. The subtext seemed increasingly clear, but I still could not believe they would actually exclude me from the wedding. That same weekend, I attempted to discuss the family business with Mother, having noticed some concerning patterns in the quarterly reports I received as part owner. Large withdrawals had been made from the main accounts, ostensibly for business development but without the usual documentation. "This is hardly the time to discuss boring business matters," Mother deflected when I brought it up. "We are celebrating your sister's engagement to a wonderful family. But these withdrawals are significant, Mom. Almost $200,000 last quarter alone. I am expanding the business, Hassan. Your father never had the vision to take things to the next level. Now please, drop it. This weekend is about Alyssa." Everything that weekend seemed to be about Alyssa, which might have been reasonable for an engaged woman, except that Alyssa herself was barely speaking to me. When I finally cornered her for a private conversation, her coldness was shocking. "You always do this," she said when I asked if something was wrong. "Always trying to make everything about you. What are you talking about? I have barely said anything all weekend." "Exactly. Sitting there judging everyone, thinking you are better than us because you moved away and got your fancy tech job." "Alyssa, that is not true. I am just trying to be part of your life, part of this wedding." She gave me a look I will never forget. A mixture of pity and disdain. "You have never been part of this family anyway. You have always been different. Always had to do things your own way. Maybe if you had tried harder to fit in." Her words stunned me into silence. Was this really how she saw me? As someone who had deliberately separated himself from the family? The conversation ended abruptly when Mother called Alyssa away, leaving me with a growing sense that something was very wrong with this entire situation. 3 months before the wedding, I still had not received a formal invitation. Despite the growing evidence that something was amiss, I continued making preparations to attend. I purchased an expensive suit, had it carefully tailored, and began searching for the perfect wedding gift. I wanted something meaningful. Something that would show Alyssa that regardless of our differences, I valued our connection as siblings. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I discovered that an engagement party had been held the previous weekend. The photos showed an elegant affair at the Thompson estate, with Mother prominent in many shots, beaming alongside the happy couple. Dozens of guests raised champagne glasses in celebration, none of whom I recognized. I had not been informed about the event, let alone invited. I called Mother the next morning, trying to keep my tone neutral. "The engagement party looked lovely," I said after exchanging brief pleasantries. "Oh, you saw the photos?" "Yes, it was a beautiful evening. The Thompsons really know how to entertain. I am a little confused about why I was not invited, Mom." A brief silence then. "It was a very intimate gathering, Hassan. Just the closest family and friends. I am Alyssa's brother. How much closer family could there be? Do not start with your dramatics, she sighed. There will be plenty of events you can attend. Speaking of which, have you booked your hotel for the wedding weekend? The main hotel is fully booked with the wedding party, but there are some nice options nearby. Her deflection was obvious, but I let it pass, asking instead about specific wedding details. What time was the ceremony? What was the dress code? Would there be a rehearsal dinner? Each question was met with vague, non-committal answers. Still finalizing the details, or the wedding planner is handling all that. As the weeks passed and still no invitation arrived, my concern grew. I reached out to my cousin Emma, who had always been kind to me and maintained relationships with both sides of the family. Have you received your invitation to Alyssa's wedding yet? I asked when we connected on the phone. Ages ago, she replied, then hesitated. You have not gotten yours? No, and honestly, I am starting to wonder if I will. Another pause, longer this time. Hassan, I do not know how to tell you this, but Aunt Patricia has been making changes to the guest list. I overheard her telling my mom that the wedding needed to be curated for the right social impression. What does that even mean? I think she might be trying to present a certain image to the Thompsons. You know how she gets about appearances. I thanked Emma for her honesty, but dismissed her concerns in my own mind. Surely even Mother would not go so far as to exclude her own son from his sister's wedding. There had to be another explanation. I channeled my anxiety into finding the perfect wedding gift. After weeks of searching, I found it. Dad's vintage pocket watch. He had left it to me in his will, but I had always felt Alyssa should have a meaningful keepsake from him too. I took it to a specialist who restored it beautifully, adding a custom inscription on the inside cover. Time passes, but family is forever. Love, Hassan. With the wedding now just 2 months away, I booked my flights and reserved a hotel room near the Thompson Grand Hotel, where the reception would be held. I emailed Alyssa my travel details, asking if there were any events I should plan around. Her response came 3 days later. Thanks for letting me know you will be in town. Things are super hectic, with final preparations. That was it. No confirmation about the wedding schedule. No mention of my role or inclusion in the events. Still, I held on to hope that this was simply poor communication during a stressful time. 4 weeks before the wedding, I called the wedding planner directly, having found her contact information on the custom wedding website I had discovered through a search. The website itself was password protected for most content, another bad sign. Hello, this is Hassan Reynolds, Alyssa's brother. I'm just calling to confirm some details about the wedding. Oh, the planner sounded surprised. Let me check my notes. I could hear papers shuffling. I do not seem to have you listed in any of our planning documents, Mr. Reynolds. That must be a mistake. I am the bride's brother. Well, the mother of the bride has been my primary contact for family matters. Perhaps you should speak with her? I am really not authorized to make any changes to the arrangements at this stage. My anxiety was now shifting to a sickening certainty. 1 week before the wedding, I received an automated alert from the bank regarding the family business accounts. As a part owner, I had set up notifications for large transactions after noticing the earlier withdrawals. The alert showed another large sum, $300,000, transferred out of the main business account to a personal account I did not recognize. I immediately called our family lawyer, Robert Sullivan, who had worked with Dad for 20 years and managed the business legal affairs. Robert, I am concerned about some large transfers from the business accounts. Do you know anything about this? Hassan, he sounded uncomfortable. Your mother has been making some investments. As the majority shareholder, she has considerable discretion over company funds. These are not investments, Robert. There is no documentation, no board approval. This is not how Dad ran the business. I understand your concerns, but legally, there is little I can do without clear evidence of impropriety. Perhaps you should discuss this directly with your mother. His evasiveness only deepened my suspicions. Something was very wrong, both with the wedding situation and with the business finances. The night before I was scheduled to fly to Chicago, I sent Alyssa a final text. Really looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. So happy for your special day. Her response came hours later. Oh, you are coming to town? Maybe we can get coffee next week. Things will be crazy the next few days. With wedding stuff. I stared at the message in disbelief. My own sister was clearly suggesting that I was not expected at her wedding. Still, I decided to proceed with my travel plans. I needed to see for myself what was happening, and perhaps find a way to resolve things face to face. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect weather, sunny but not too hot for July in Chicago. I dressed carefully in my new suit, a dark blue Italian cut that had cost more than I usually spent on clothing. The watch I had restored for Alyssa was in its presentation box, wrapped in silver paper with a simple white ribbon. I arrived at the cathedral 30 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The historic building was decorated with cascades of white flowers and greenery, elegant and understated. Guests were already filling the pews, the women in colorful summer dresses and hats, the men in formal suits. Several relatives greeted me warmly as I entered. "Hassan, so good to see you." Uncle Robert embraced me. "Been too long. How is Boston treating you?" "It is good, thanks. Work keeps me busy. Your dad would be proud of you, son. He always said you were the one with the head for business." These interactions bolstered my confidence. Perhaps everything had been a misunderstanding after all. I took a seat in the middle section of the church, not presuming to sit in the reserved front rows without explicit instruction. The ceremony began promptly. Classical music filled the soaring space as the wedding party proceeded down the aisle. Jacob stood at the altar looking nervous, but happy. Then came Alyssa on the arm of our mother's brother, Uncle James, who had apparently been given the honor of walking her down the aisle in our father's absence. Alyssa was stunning in a designer gown that probably cost as much as a small car. As she passed my row, our eyes met briefly. She showed no reaction, as if looking at a stranger, and continued her procession to the altar. Mother sat in the front row, resplendent in an obviously expensive dress and elaborate hat. She did not look back or acknowledge my presence in any way. Throughout the ceremony, I felt increasingly out of place, as if I were an uninvited observer rather than a member of the immediate family. The service was traditional and beautiful. I felt a complex mixture of emotions watching my sister take her vows. Pride in the confident woman she had become, sadness at our estrangement, anger at being so obviously sidelined, and beneath it all, a persistent love for the little sister I had grown up with. After the ceremony, guests were directed to the Thompson Grand Hotel for the reception. The landmark building had been decorated to match the cathedral, with the same flowers and elegant touches. A string quartet played in the corner of the grand ballroom as attendants guided guests to the check-in table. The security and check-in procedures were elaborate. Each guest provided their name and received a personalized place card with their table assignment. I approached the table confidently, straightening my tie. "Good afternoon." Hassan Reynolds, the young woman at the table, smiled professionally and began scanning her list. Her smile faltered as she flipped through several pages. "I am sorry, sir. Could you spell your last name for me?" I did so, watching as she checked a second list, then consulted with another staff member in hushed tones. "I am sorry, sir," she finally said. "I do not see your name anywhere on our guest lists. There must be a mistake. I am the bride's brother." More consultation, more list checking. "I am very sorry, Mr. Reynolds, but you are not listed on any of our guest lists or seating charts." I stood there, the gift box suddenly heavy in my hands, as the reality of the situation became undeniable. Scanning the room, I saw Mother watching from across the space, a satisfied expression on her face. Our eyes met, and rather than looking away, she deliberately approached. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough to attract attention from nearby guests. "They are saying I am not on the guest list," I said quietly, trying to maintain my composure. She smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. "Did you really think you were invited? Strangers are not allowed." The cruelty of the statement struck me like a physical blow. Behind her, I could see Alyssa in her wedding gown, deliberately turning away from the scene, pretending not to notice. A security officer approached. "Sir, is there a problem here?" In that moment, I had a choice. I could create a scene, demand my rightful place as family, and potentially ruin my sister's wedding day. Or I could leave with what dignity remained to me. "Then I will live like a stranger," I said calmly to my mother, loud enough for only her to hear. I placed the wrapped gift on the gift table as I walked out, hoping that someday Alyssa would open it and understand what she had thrown away. The security officer followed me to ensure I left the premises, a final humiliation that I endured with outward calm. Only when I reached my rental car in the parking garage did I allow the emotions to surface. Anger, hurt, betrayal. They washed over me in waves as I sat behind the wheel, unsure where to go or what to do next. The family I had desperately tried to maintain connections with had publicly rejected me. The question was, what would I do now? I drove back to my hotel in a state of emotional turmoil, barely registering the familiar Chicago streets. My father's voice seemed to echo in my memory. "Family should stand by each other. Hassan. When everything else falls away, that is what remains." What would he think of what had happened today? What would he say about Mother's cruel dismissal or Alyssa's willing participation in my exclusion? In my hotel room, I allowed myself 1 hour of pure grief. I removed the expensive suit, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat by the window, looking out at the city skyline. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest. For 32 years, I had been part of a family that apparently had never wanted me. All my efforts to maintain connections, despite the distance, had been meaningless gestures, unwelcome and unappreciated. As the hour passed, something shifted inside me. The crushing grief began to crystallize into clarity. Perhaps this clean break was actually a gift, a final confirmation that I needed to build my life without the burden of one-sided family obligations. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. The screen showed an unknown number with a Chicago area code. I almost ignored it, but some instinct made me answer. "Hello, Hassan? This is Jacob Thompson, Alyssa's husband." His voice sounded tense, uncomfortable. "Congratulations on your wedding," I said automatically, years of ingrained politeness taking over. "Thank you. But listen, I do not have much time. I just found out what happened with you at the reception. This was not right. I want you to know, I had no idea you were being excluded." His words surprised me. "I appreciate that, but it is pretty clear where I stand with my family now." "That is just it," Jacob continued, lowering his voice. "There is something you should know. I overheard an argument between your mother and my parents last night. Something about business finances and appearances." My attention sharpened immediately. "What exactly did you hear?" "Your mother has been misrepresenting your family's financial situation. Apparently, she has been using company funds, your family business, to create the impression of wealth." My parents were concerned when they discovered some discrepancies in her background story. The bank alert suddenly made perfect sense. She has been embezzling from the family business. It sounds like it. And from what I could gather, she is planning to make some final large transfers this weekend while everyone is distracted by the wedding. Something about offshore accounts. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Mother had been systematically draining the business my father had built, using the money to buy her way into high society through Alyssa's advantageous marriage. My exclusion was partly personal, yes, but also practical. I was the one person who might notice and object to the financial fraud. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Jacob. "Because it is wrong," he said simply. "I love Alyssa, but I cannot stand by while your mother bankrupts a business your father built. And the way they treated you today, that is not the family I thought I was marrying into." A plan began forming in my mind. As a software engineer with a background in financial systems, and as a legal part owner of the business, I had access and skills that Mother likely had not considered. "Jacob, I may need your help. Are you willing to keep me informed about what is happening at the reception?" "Yes, but I need to be careful. Your mother is watching me closely. Just text me if you see her making calls or leaving the room for extended periods. That is all I need." After hanging up, I immediately got to work. I opened my laptop and began accessing the business systems remotely. Using the security credentials Dad had insisted I maintain even after moving to Boston, Mother had never been technically savvy, relying on others to manage the digital aspects of the business. Sure enough, I found evidence of systematic financial misappropriation going back at least 3 years. Large sums transferred to personal accounts, falsified business expenses, even mortgages taken against business properties without proper documentation. The total was staggering, nearly $2 million diverted from the company my father had built with decades of honest work. Most damning of all, I discovered preparations for a final large transfer scheduled for that evening, timed to coincide with the height of wedding festivities, when no one would be paying attention to business matters. $3 million was set to move from the main business accounts to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I immediately placed calls to the bank trustees that Dad had established as an additional layer of security. These were arrangements Mother likely did not even know existed, contingency measures Dad had created in case of emergency. This is Hassan Reynolds, authorized trustee on the Reynolds Furniture Holdings accounts. I need to initiate Security Protocol 7 immediately. The bank officer was professional but cautious. That is a serious measure, Mr. Reynolds. It will freeze all accounts pending investigation. I understand. I have evidence of systematic fraud that I am prepared to submit to your fraud department and to the proper authorities. While the bank began their procedures, I documented everything I had found, creating secure backups of all evidence. Then I contacted the financial authorities with detailed reports of the suspicious activities, timing it so that their initial inquiries would begin reaching Mother during the wedding reception. Working through the night, I systematically closed every avenue Mother might use to complete her planned theft. Security blocks on the accounts, alerts to all financial institutions connected to the business, cancellation of transfer authorizations. I was thorough and methodical, using every tool at my disposal to protect what remained of my father's legacy. Throughout this process, I received occasional updates from Jacob. Reception in full swing. Your mother keeps checking her phone and looking worried. Later, she just stepped out to make a call. Came back looking angry. As dawn approached, I had done everything possible to secure the business finances and document the fraud. The final piece was a detailed letter to the board of directors explaining what had happened and my actions to protect the company. As a 25% owner, I had both the right and the responsibility to act. This was not about revenge, though a part of me took grim satisfaction in knowing that Mother's carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. This was about justice, about protecting my father's legacy and the livelihoods of the people who worked for Reynolds Furniture. I sent a final text to Jacob as morning light began filtering through my hotel window. Thank you for your help. Whatever happens next, please know I do not blame you or hold any ill will toward you personally. His response came quickly. I understand. For what it is worth, I think you did the right thing. I showered and changed, then packed my bags. There was nothing more for me to do in Chicago. The mechanisms I had set in motion would now proceed without my direct involvement. As I checked out of the hotel, I felt a strange sense of peace beneath the lingering pain. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely free of the obligation to maintain family ties that had never been reciprocated. From the safety of my hotel room at a different location across town, I monitored the situation through Jacob's discreet text updates and the automated alerts I had set up on the business accounts. The wedding reception was in full swing, a lavish celebration with hundreds of guests enjoying what would likely be one of the social events of the season. According to Jacob, Mother was becoming increasingly distracted as the afternoon progressed. She keeps checking her phone and stepping away from the table, he texted. Coming back looking more stressed each time. The first official notification would have reached her about 2 hours into the reception. A simple email alert from the bank about unusual account activity requiring immediate attention. Nothing alarming enough to cause immediate panic, but sufficient to create concern. This would have been followed by increasingly urgent communications as her attempts to access the accounts were systematically blocked. By the time the wedding cake was being cut, Mother would have realized that something was very wrong with her financial plans. Her phone is ringing constantly now, Jacob reported. She tried to silence it, but it keeps going off. People are starting to notice. The first dance had just concluded when Jacob sent another update. Bank representatives just arrived. Asked to speak with Patricia Reynolds immediately. She tried to brush them off, but they are insistent. I could imagine the scene unfolding in the elegant ballroom. Mother, trying to maintain her composure, while her carefully constructed world began collapsing around her. The mixture of confusion and growing panic as she realized that her schemes had been discovered. She is blaming someone trying to ruin the wedding, Jacob texted, getting loud about it. My parents are looking mortified. The next hour brought a flurry of updates describing a reception devolving into chaos. Mother had apparently tried to leave, only to be informed that her accounts had been frozen pending investigation. The Thompson family, horrified by the public scandal unfolding at what should have been a pristine social event, had begun distantly establishing that they had no knowledge of any financial improprieties. Guests were witnessing the spectacle with varying degrees of shock and poorly concealed interest. Several had begun recording video on their phones, ensuring that the meltdown would live forever on social media, the very public humiliation Mother had always feared most. Financial authorities arrived, Jacob reported. Private conversation happening in side room. Lots of gesturing visible through glass doors. I watched a short clip that had already made its way online, showing Mother being escorted from the ballroom by men in suits. Her face a mask of fury and fear. The elegant society matron persona had cracked completely, revealing the desperate, grasping woman beneath. Alyssa is devastated, Jacob texted. She just found out how much of this wedding was paid for with company money. She had no idea. Part of me felt sympathy for my sister. Regardless of how she had treated me, learning that your wedding was essentially funded by stolen money would be a terrible shock. But another part recognized that Alyssa had been all too willing to accept Mother's largesse without questioning its source, all too ready to discard family connections that might complicate her social climbing. Reception is basically over, came Jacob's final update. Most guests leaving. Your mother is being taken for formal questioning. Alyssa is with my parents. It is over. I felt no joy in what had happened, only a hollow sense of justice served. The business my father had built might be damaged, but would survive. The people whose livelihoods depended on it would not suffer because of Mother's selfishness. That was what mattered most. I changed my flight reservation, booking an earlier return to Boston for that evening. There was nothing left for me in Chicago now. As I headed to the airport, I passed within view of the Thompson Grand Hotel in the distance, its elegant facade now the scene of a very different kind of social event than planned. It is over, I repeated to myself, echoing Jacob's words. The family illusion I had clung to for so many years had finally been shattered completely. It was painful, but there was also freedom in that finality. No more striving for approval that would never come. No more maintaining connections with people who saw me as an inconvenience at best, an embarrassment at worst. As my plane took off from Chicago, I looked down at the city lights spreading out below, growing smaller as we ascended. Somewhere down there was the house I had grown up in, the business my father had built, the sister who had rejected me, and the mother who had called me a stranger. I was leaving it all behind, not with bitterness, but with a determination to build something better, something real, in the life that awaited me in Boston. 3 months passed. Autumn arrived in Boston, painting the city in brilliant reds and golds. I had thrown myself into work, finding solace in the clean logic of code and the straightforward challenges of software development. My apartment had become a sanctuary of sorts, a place entirely my own, where no one questioned my worth or found me lacking. The legal aftermath of Mother's actions had been swift and comprehensive. She was facing multiple charges of embezzlement and fraud. The family business was in recovery under my guidance, as I had stepped in to take control as the only remaining family shareholder. Many changes had been necessary, but we had managed to avoid layoffs, preserving the livelihoods of employees who had been with the company for decades. I had maintained minimal contact with the family situation, letting lawyers handle most communications. There had been no word from Alyssa or Mother directly. The clean break I had made seemed complete and permanent. Then came an unexpected knock at my door one Sunday afternoon. I opened it to find Alyssa standing there, looking exhausted and humbled. Gone was the polished society bride, replaced by someone who seemed smaller somehow, more vulnerable. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat at my kitchen table, 2 cups of coffee between us like a neutral zone in contested territory. "I owe you an apology," she began, her voice steady despite the obvious effort it took. "Several apologies, actually." "You do not need to." "Yes, I do," she interrupted. "What happened at the wedding was unforgivable. Letting Mom convince me that you did not belong in our new life. I have no excuse except that I wanted so badly to believe I was special, chosen for this amazing life with Jacob." I sipped my coffee, letting her continue. "After everything fell apart at the reception, Jacob told me what you did, how you protected the business, how you could have caused a scene at the wedding but chose to walk away instead." She looked down at her hands. "He also told me how Mother had been manipulating both of us for years, playing us against each other." "She was good at that," I acknowledged. "Too good." Looking back now, I can see the pattern so clearly. Every time you and I started to get close as teenagers, she would tell me something you supposedly said about me. Every accomplishment of yours became a criticism of me. Every success I had was used to make you feel inadequate. The revelation was not entirely surprising, but hearing it articulated so clearly brought a strange sense of validation. All those years of feeling like an outsider in my own family had not been entirely in my imagination. "What happens now?" I asked. "I do not know," Alyssa admitted. "Jacob and I are trying to rebuild our marriage after all this. His parents are not thrilled about being associated with our family scandal, but they have been surprisingly supportive of me personally. As for Mom, she is refusing to take responsibility for anything. Says it was all just business expansion that was misunderstood." "That sounds like her. Hassan, I know I have no right to ask, but is there any chance we could try to, I do not know, be actual siblings? Not now. Maybe? But someday?" I considered her question carefully. The hurt was still real, the betrayal still fresh, but beneath it all was the simple fact that she was my only sister, the only other person who shared my childhood memories, good and bad. "I think we need to establish some boundaries first," I said finally. "I cannot just pretend none of this happened, but I am willing to see where things might go from here." Slowly, relief washed over her face. "That is more than I deserve." Over the following months, a new family dynamic gradually emerged from the ashes of the old one. I maintained primary control of the business, working remotely from Boston, but making monthly trips to Chicago. Jacob proved to be an unexpected ally in the business recovery, offering connections and advice that helped stabilize our financial situation. My relationship with Alyssa evolved cautiously. We began with occasional phone calls, then video chats, eventually working up to monthly dinners when I was in Chicago for business. There was an honesty between us now that had never existed before. A willingness to acknowledge the dysfunction that had shaped our childhood and early adult years. Mother remained a complicated figure in our lives. She eventually accepted a plea deal to avoid a public trial, receiving a suspended sentence and community service. I made the decision to support her financially but maintained strict emotional boundaries. Some relationships cannot be fully repaired once broken, and I had finally accepted that my relationship with Mother might be one of them. The most surprising development was the family I built around me in Boston. Friends who had supported me unconditionally through the crisis became closer than ever. My colleague David and his wife invited me for weekly dinners. My neighbor Rachel checked in regularly with home-baked bread and conversation. My running group became a solid source of companionship and healthy competition. This chosen family taught me that connections based on mutual respect and genuine caring were far more valuable than those maintained out of obligation or appearances. I learned to define my worth not through others' approval but through my own integrity and actions. 6 months after the wedding disaster, I hosted Thanksgiving in my Boston apartment. Around my table sat an eclectic group: my tech company colleagues, my running partners, my elderly neighbor who had no other family, and, somewhat tentatively, Alyssa and Jacob, who had flown in for the holiday. As I looked around at these people, some related by blood and others by choice. I realized that family is not simply what you are born into. It is what you build, what you nurture, what you choose every day through actions large and small. Sometimes, strangers become family, and family becomes strangers, and there is wisdom in recognizing the difference. So what is the lesson in all this? Perhaps it is that genuine connections matter more than appearances. That integrity, even when painful, brings its own peace. That sometimes the family you create is more real than the one you were born into. And most importantly, that you always have the power to define yourself beyond the limitations others try to place on you. I would love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to make difficult choices about family relationships? How do you define what family means to you? Leave a comment below and let me know. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more of my experiences. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most authentic life.